What is up, Dynasty fam? We're going to be talking about some superflex stashes for your Dynasty football leagues. Fantasy season and NFL season is right around the corner, so let's get into it. Starting off with the honorable mentions, going to have Marcus Mariota and Mason Rudolph. Mariota is going to be backing up Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. And I do like Jaden Daniels, but we do know he is a rushing quarterback. The play style, right? That's been one of the knocks on him is his play style. Leaves his body out there, takes some big hits. And also just being a rookie, right? A lot of rookies usually tend to struggle. It would not be uncommon for him to come out and struggle in his first few games, right? Possibly and even the entire season. We don't know. I'm expecting him to do well, but if either he gets injured or if he just struggles as a rookie in his first season, maybe they pull the plug early, bring him out, let him learn a little bit more, and we get to see Marcus Mariota possibly. And also the other side of that is Mason Rudolph with the Tennessee Titans backing up Will Levis. Now, a lot of people like Will Levis. He has been showing good signs in camp. They're saying that he's taken some steps forward, but he's still unproven as well. So if he comes out and he's struggling, really these guys that have come out, really these unproven guys is where I'm kind of looking, or maybe high injury risk. And I think Will Levis is one. We don't know how he's going to be, how he's going to come out. We haven't seen Calvin Ridley do much either. So we'll see what the verdict is on Will Levis, but this is just someone that to think about in mind. If you see Will Levis struggling, Jaden Daniels, right, something like that throughout the season, these are some guys to just kind of keep in mind. Moving in at our first one, we're going to give you five. And at number five, we have, and all these players are going to be lower rostered, not going to give you high roster percentage. Everybody's under pretty much 40% rostered. And the first one is going to be Ryan Tannehill, only 15% rostered and reasonably so. But in deeper superflex leagues, I think he's just an interesting player that is out there on your waiver wire. We've seen him have some fantasy success in the past few seasons, right? Not as of recent, but a few seasons ago, he was the QB8, then the QB12. So he had some back-to-back fantasy relevant seasons. We know he has that rushing upside, and that was pretty much when he had AJ Brown. He has struggled, but he lost AJ Brown. So since then, it's kind of understandable. They replaced AJ Brown for Treylon Burks, and it just has not been well since then, right? They had Hopkins, aging Hopkins, and now he even got injured the past season, and he's just out there waiting for a call. And last season, we saw 66 different starting QBs for the NFL. And if something were to happen with somebody, maybe that's making a playoff push or anything like that, I think he's just an interesting name to be out there that someone could maybe add just to bring in a veteran. We saw that last year, even with Joe Flacco, a household name that a team may be interested in bringing in if they're competing. So Ryan Tannehill only 15% rostered, someone to keep in mind on your waiver wires. I wouldn't add him yet, but just a superflex stash to keep in mind. Now, moving on to player number 4, we have Jameis Winston and also DTR, right? Dorian Thompson Robinson, 22% rostered. I put them both on here. We're not sure. It was looking like Thompson Robinson was going to be the backup. Now it's leaning like it's Jameis Winston. They were shopping Winston a couple. They were said to be shopping Winston, but ended up signing him, bringing him on. So now it's looking like Jameis Winston is the lead backup there. And we've seen Winston have some fantasy relevance, fantasy success. He does like to sling it downfield. And Deshaun Watson really has not looked good, right? He hasn't looked good. He hasn't played much, right? In the past few seasons, he had a few games back last year, and he didn't look like his original form. Now he's bouncing back from that shoulder injury. We'll see if he can bounce back, but he did have that shoulder surgery on that throwing arm, and he's really been limited right now in practice, right? He didn't get any preseason reps, so he hasn't really got some in-game reps. We'll see how he ramps up throughout the season, but he was already experiencing some soreness in his shoulder. He was going to play, they said, the last preseason game. Then they said he was experiencing some shoulder soreness, so they sat him out. And they've really been taking it slow with him, but pretty much he's going to have to ramp it up now that the NFL week 1 is on their way. So I think that even him being a little rusty and not having that gameplay that he should have been having the past few seasons, then even in practice and preseason doesn't really get those game reps that I think are pretty important for him, especially. So if he starts out the year struggling, something to monitor, right? Jameis Winston out there. If Deshaun Watson starts out the year struggling, definitely would keep my eye on Jameis Winston. And then you could also have just a setback with the shoulder, right? If he hasn't had any contact yet. So after if he takes a big hit or anything like that, we don't know how that shoulder is going to react. And also as the season goes on and he's just throwing the ball more and those in-game throws, we'll see how his body handles it. But somebody to keep in mind right now in your Superflex leagues. Moving on to number 3, Nick Mullins, 15% rostered. And pretty much right there in Minnesota, we've seen the Darnold experiment already fail multiple times in different teams. Now, one thing that's going good for Darnold is this is pretty much going to be his best wide receiver room that he's going to have with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, as well as Aaron Jones there in that backfield. It's a good pass catching back. But I think that I would be more shocked to see him sustain the success throughout the whole season. We've seen Darnold maybe have a few games, where people were selling first, right? When he started out the season with Carolina, people were trading him for first round draft picks, which was crazy. But we could see maybe a few games, but I would be shocked if he sustains it the whole season. So I think Nick Mullins is a guy it was a decent stash right now in your Superflex leagues. If Darnold were to come out and struggle, we're probably going to see some Nick Mullins. So now at player number 2, we have Drew Lock, 32% rostered. Really here, just Daniel Jones has not looked good. We were excited about Daniel Jones. I know I was with, Brian Dable, but it just hasn't looked good for him. Last season, he was 43rd in yards per game with only 151 yards per game. And that was with quarterbacks that played 3 or more games. Only 2 passing touchdowns. He played 6 games last season. He only had 2 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he was also sacked 30 times. So it was pretty bad last season for Daniel Jones. And even in the preseason, he came out, threw 2 picks in his preseason game. He played that last preseason game in the game versus the Texans. He threw for 138 yards, was not too bad, 11 for 18, but threw 2 picks. Did not look good early on for Daniel Jones. He got the wide receiver upgrade now with Malik Neighbors, which is great, but he also loses Saquon Barkley. And also his offensive line, we mentioned the sacks. They had the worst pass blocking grade for PFF with a 43. So they did make some moves, but that offensive line needs a lot of work. We'll see how it comes together this season. But if Daniel Jones struggles again this season, we may see some Drew Lock. Now going into my player number 1, we have Joe Flacco, 31% rostered. Now Joe Flacco, guys, was first in the NFL in yards per game last season with 323 yards per game. And he also had 13 passing touchdowns in only 5 games played. So small sample size, but Joe Flacco looked good towards the end of the season. And he is backing up Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson only played 3 games, and we all love Anthony Richardson, especially in Dynasty, Superflex leagues, just a physical specimen. But his play style does open himself up to being injured, likes to lower the shoulder. That's pretty much how he got injured last season. And beyond the injury, I think there's also still the possibility that Anthony Richardson struggles this season. He has not had much game experience, guys. In college, he didn't really get the starting role until his senior year there at Florida. And then he sees limited action in the NFL his first season. So he's pretty much still a rookie. So I think that there is a chance that he struggles. He has a good wide receiver core as well, his RB, right, with Jonathan Taylor. But I think he also already had a lukewarm just preseason. But I think it's important for him, because he's missed so much time and development in the QB process and the experience just throwing the ball and in those in-game situations. He already threw a pick his first preseason game. He went 8 for 14 for 86 yards, threw 1 touchdown, also just threw a pick. It was a miscommunication with his receiver. I think it was a tight end actually. But I think there's a chance that there could be some growing pains early on with Anthony Richardson. And with a competent vet behind him like Flacco on the bench, I think it's in the realm of possibilities that we see some Flacco even without an injury from Anthony Richardson. So I think it's just a decent stash. Not saying that Richardson's going to struggle, but I'm just saying he hasn't had the experience, so it's still within the range of outcomes on top of the injury risk that Anthony Richardson's play style kind of brings. So Flacco is going to be my number one stash for Superflex leagues. So that's all I have for you guys today. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, let me know some of your favorite stashes. I will be doing a wide receiver running back stash video also. Hopefully by tomorrow we can have that out before the season. So make sure you are subscribed and checking out some of our other videos.